Hello, everyone. So we have with us today Babu Rahman, who is the current president of Agami, and he has actually been one of the founding members of Agami. As he proudly talks about Agami, this is a very old organization. Almost the idea first conceptualized in 1990, and here we are with a big organization, three chapters across North America, um, actually two chapters across North America, but one in the making, or we're just talking about it. And then there is the sister foundation, Agami Education Foundation in Bangladesh, which is established and running its programs swiftly and successfully. So there is a lot. There is a lot. Of Agami that has grown over the years, and I guess probably this conversation can go as long as possible because there's just so much to talk about. But essentially, this interview was conducted in anticipation of his exit as a president of Agami Inc. Right after the elections that will be happening very soon. So, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. And again, I know that there's a little bit of uncertainty on your side with you ready to evacuate because of the California fires, but thank you again for making time for this.
Thank you so much, Mo. It's my pleasure to join here.
Alrighty, so I will get started. I have a few questions here
Okay.
that we do want to ask you, and again, you are a founder, so it's just there's just so much. Like even though this is an exit interview as a president, but there's just so much as a founder that you have seen over the years, and that's what we would love to talk about. So
Sure.
tell me about. I know that you mentioned that you started in 1990,
Mhm.
um, and tell us a little bit about that time. That what made you think that education is what you want to follow, and why did you think that? Um, because it's very unlikely sometimes that you have been all your life in US, and it's pretty unlikely that you would be thinking about Bangladesh first before you think about US, because it's the circumstances that you see is what you respond to. So what made you actually go out and think about Bangladesh and how you want to help?
Yeah, great question, Mo. So obviously, my parents are Bangladeshi. My abu is from Dhaka and Ammu from Komila. And so obviously, I consider myself 100% Bangladeshi. And even though I'm born and brought up in Canada and I grew up here in US for school, one thing I will definitely say that is that especially my Ammu, she she really impressed upon my brother and me the need to always remember how fortunate we were, and to always remember that regardless of how bad you may think things are for yourself, there's always somebody who is in a worse situation. And of course, that applies not just to Bangladesh, to anywhere in life, but being that Abu for Bangladesh, it really resonated. And then you ask them, well, why did education resonate with me? So that's actually a very personal story because when I first sort of got my taste of fundraising for Bangladesh, there was another cyclone in I think in 1989. And if you remember, internet didn't exist back then, not really significantly, and I started raising funds actually by paper, sending out just putting up flyers and whatnot. But I raised about $1,500, and the main thing is that it felt good. But then the big question came up at that point, which is okay, $1,500. What do I do with it? How do I know it goes to the people who really need it, right?
Mhm.
And I remember looking, I don't even remember where I looked, probably through some of the elders in the community asking, what do I do? They said, oh, Government Bangladesh or Red Cross or this or that. And these were all organizations that I just didn't have high confidence that the money which I worked so hard to raise would actually go to the people that really need it. So I sent up the money because I didn't have any other options, but it truly was with a with a prayer, and I have no clue if the money actually hit the bottom line. That really, I think, Mo, is a big driver for, okay, we need to do something else on our own. We need to have our own end-to-end, high visibility, full accountability pipeline for money. And so that was sort of the pushing or the forcing point for creating more organization. Now for Agami, the reason why Agami is all about education is because, at least for my family, and I'm sure so many of our families, Bangladeshi families and families from other countries, for all those families, education is probably the single biggest um, decision point or decider of their fate. I know that my dada, he was a very smart man, but he got sick, missed a year of school, and totally missed his education. And he deeply regretted that. So he, I think, finished with high school education, and he finished as a clerk, which is a decent position. But he made sure that my Abu focused completely on education. So from the very beginning, Abu, who was the oldest of nine, made sure that he followed his studies. The money was pooled to take care of my father, and then he obviously helped his siblings. But the point is that my father was pushed to finish his PhD. And so you can see, Mo, in one and a half generations, my whole family's fortunes changed from being at the mercy of the government as a clerk system to having a PhD and driving your own future. My Abu came to Canada, got a solid position, and in our family, we were able to bootstrap our way up. So it's a bit of a long explanation, but I saw firsthand the transformative power of education. And I said, this has to be the sole focus of Agami from the very beginning.
That's amazing. And I can sense from where education has been your primary focus. I guess it's been there all throughout.
Yeah,
Yeah. I'm glad because I see how and you're right. I think I have seen that too, that education is one thing that you can carry along yourself, everywhere and anywhere. That nothing else is actually yours other than the education that you've achieved, and it's not tangible, but it is what you have the best with you. So that's amazing that you were able to, even during that time, just not think about yourself but also think about other people who would similarly um, think about education, but they're just underprivileged, and hence they can have what they're looking for. So I'm sure, during that time, obviously right now the communication, the standards, it's much more easier to get started with a idea because it is easier to communicate with people. How difficult was it at that point of time to, initiate this idea to friends and family, to fundraise, and to even start thinking that Agami education in Bangladesh can be a possibility?
that's a great question, Mo. It gives me shivers thinking of all the challenges I had because nowadays you're right. You can send off 1,000 emails in a minute and communication is done. Back then it was incredibly difficult because we didn't really have, I would call, a great email system. One, I didn't have any kind of network of, uh, large Bangladeshi network of friends and family. And so the way that the idea of Agami was socialized amongst people was really going to addas, going to community functions and talking about Agami. And you can imagine 30 years ago, 25, whatever years ago, talking about this crazy idea to raise money and start your own nonprofit was met with a lot of skepticism. And another strike against me, well, just reality is that, as everyone knows in the community, I don't speak Bangla.
Mhm.
So there was a lot of pushback, and people literally told me, why don't you go first learn Bangla, and then we can talk about starting a nonprofit. And I just said, look, there are going to be naysayers, but I got to keep pushing. But I think because of everything you point out, Mo, these really high friction communication paths and whatnot, it just, that's why Agami did not grow so quickly in the beginning. Lord knows I tried. I had some contacts in here in Berkeley, down in Los Angeles, even in Minnesota. But again, the adoption was very slow. And then, life kicks in, right? Marriage, had a
Mhm.
couple of moves, few kids. So all these things
Yes, definitely.
conspired to impede or slow down the growth of Agami. But I think actually what kicked it in high gear was that in 2002, my Amu passed away. And as you know, as I've already told you, she was a huge inspiration for me and my brother. Just tremendous drive and determination. And so she passed away, and my Abu came here and visited, and we really just picked up Agami. And that year is actually when I met Sabah and Hassan Bhai. And then we said, okay, let's do this. Let's get this thing started. And those three musketeers together formed the nexus of the, Agami 2.0, shall we say.
Wow, that's amazing. And like what you just said that sometimes it perspires. So glad you kept it up. And that is exactly why it has spread all across. So let's talk about, challenges that you were probably facing. One, that Bangla was not your best, your best talking point,
Yeah.
but but like tell us a little bit more about that. It's been so many years past, and obviously the challenges have been very different.
Mhm.
I would want to know, as a president, not as a founder. As a founder, definitely you've had more hands into, making this organization, grow it and stuff, and make sure that, the people in it, the people who are driving it, have the same values as you do. But as a president, I think you have become, you have been a president even before, and this was your most recent tenure as a president of Agami. So tell me one thing: the mission hasn't changed since the day you started. So as a founder and as a president, the mission is still the same. It has evolved, and you wore so many hats at so many different times, like as a founder and as a president, also just as someone watching the organization grow from an outside point of view. So what has been that biggest challenge as a president in the last or in the last 5 years, and you would try to advise the new leadership about how to focus on this challenge?
Okay. So I think what you're getting at more, just so I make sure I understand the question, is really looking forward. So I've been president for 3, 4 years. Now looking forward, what are my thoughts around the big challenge Agami is
Yeah,
facing?
because I don't want to. I know that as a founder, there's a lot more. There's
Yeah.
a lot more to look at.
Sure.
But as the president, because I know that when there's someone new coming, and they will have to take basically the light from you and move on. But
Sure.
there will be more challenges coming, of course. So, in your perspective, what those challenges are, and what kind of advice would you want to give to the new leadership about
Okay.
these challenges?
No, it's a good question, Mo. So I've, you've told me some of these questions. I've thought about it, and there are obviously many challenges. But if I had to condense and focus my thoughts, my concerns, my fears, let's say, into one tight ball of concern, it would be scaling. So the biggest challenge would be how to scale Agami from where we're now to something later. So if I can, let me give a bit of an analogy, because obviously being in Silicon Valley, we do startups here. And Agami also is like a startup going through different stages, right? And 1990 was inception. And then a model that I like thinking about when I think about the growth of a startup or a company is there's this book called Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore. It's actually famous in the marketing world, so you probably have heard of it. And one of the things, there are many great concepts in the book, but one of the concepts is it talks about how does a young company move from these early adopters to these mass adopters, mass adoption. That gap is called a chasm. And what does a company do? Change, adjust to go from these true fans to mass. So I know we're not quite in that situation where, we had only a few here, and then we try to go to mass adoption. But I would like to think that we're on the cusp of mass adoption. So let's talk a little bit about sort of how we do cross that chasm to scale, to answer your question. The way, I always look at even business or Agami, nonprofits, there are sort of, I think, Mo, I like to think of three fundamental ingredients to making a company work. To me, those are product, people, and process. Okay. So for Agami, our product is sort of this mix of goods and services, right? The stuff we do, it's all the schools we support in so many ways. Teachers training, Tiffin, uniforms, science labs, chemistry labs, healthcare. But we also have this really amazing, burgeoning new area of digital product, right? Thanks to the Khan Academy Bangla Group, KAB, we're now releasing NCTB compliant videos for years. We have almost 3,000 videos in math, science, Bangla, English, and computing. We have our own YouTube channel, which is crazy. 75,000 subscribers and about 2.7 million views. And on our Khan Academy website, about daily 1,500 users. So I would say that our product is pretty well positioned. It obviously can grow and will mature. That's product, people. So we have such a rich diversity of constituents, made up mostly of volunteers, some employees, donors, and supporters. But I think to take us to the next level, to go cross the chasm to scale, Agami needs to further develop our leadership. We need to establish a better pipeline. So we need strong leaders, managers, and ensure behind it comes a constant stream of new talent willing to learn and make Agami better. And the good thing is, Mo, we are starting a lot of those pipelines, but we just need more. And I mean, your team, you're a great example of the pipeline being filled up with fresh new talent, which is wonderful. The last part of this, this tripod of requirements for a company is process. That's what makes us helps us do our work consistently with a fair amount of repeatability and predictability. And Mo, even this interview you're doing, I think is a wonderful example of the maturing of Agami's process, because I dare say that all the previous presidents, they never had an exit interview. It was bye-bye, and that was it. And so what you're doing is a great example of process where we're capturing, write-up, video, and saving it for forever. So this is great. Now, I would say though that process overall for Agami is, I think, really needs a lot of attention from us. So the next president, I believe scaling is the issue, and between product, people, process, probably process is the main area of focus. And as you know, a lot of our knowledge is institutional, which means everyone knows in their heads, but that's not repeatable, that's not scalable. And if someone leaves, walks away for whatever reason, that knowledge is gone. And so what we're trying to do, and I'm also working with you on this and some others, is how do we document this? How do we capture it in procedures, processes that then will get transferred to new recruits? So they'll be onboarded with sort of a consistent foundation of knowledge. So to me, Mo, process is the biggest area of focus that next person needs to spend time on to help scale.
Okay. So, I mean, that's very beautifully explained there. And, it just tells me that how much has actually and you've encapsulated it so well, just tells me the whole story of how much has been happening over the last 3 years, precisely because we have been trying to take a different direction in the way we really are making progress for organizationally and functionally. That's amazing. I'm glad, you make this point, because it's so, to the next president, the message is, the focus is documentation, processes, and I
Mhm.
think we can all keep screaming around it. um, so,
Yes.
and it's tough. I understand it's very tough, because for an organization starting from just four people, the founders and yourself, and growing up into somewhere where we're talking about 200 volunteers, and their time is limited. Their sometimes resources are limited, because we're really trying to make the best of what we have. I guess it's process definitely is the key. And at the same time, they also change a lot more, I understand, because of the things that there are always new stuff coming in, right? Even as a organization, our values are changing, like COVID-19. And I think this is something during your Agami presidency would be something that you want to talk about, that how has COVID-19 really like made, is this COVID-19 actually a challenge? Because obviously, just the same way like you're doing this video, I guess no other presidents had COVID-19 as an issue, and something so uncertain about how even education in its own right can be pursued in Bangladesh or anywhere else. There's been a global lockdown. There's just been nothing that about it, and it was already there. And again, children, they're what we work for, and you had to stop, or you had to rethink how even to start off again. So tell me a little bit about the last few months that COVID-19 actually came in, and how did that impact you? Because I'm sure that a lot changed the way you look at education now, or what you thought in the beginning was just unachievable. Have you achieved any of those things because of COVID?
Hmm. Good question. I need to think on my feet here, Mo. So it's interesting because, I'm talking about process. And like, for example, the school program, it's been run very well. Tantim and Sarah duo, and with a great team on the AAF side. So we had a process around that. And we had, I would say, a rhythm where you get the school submissions or applications, we review, we get the budget, we agree, we vet all the school budgets, and then we send out money, and then we monitor. So there's sort of a closed loop process around school program. And where I'm going is that there's some degree of, shall we say, more predictability. And as you have intimated, this COVID-19 just destroyed everything. The whole concept of predictability went out the window. And so it was interesting because just as I felt we were getting on our feet, we're starting to establish some process around some groups like school programs. We actually, this year, 2020, was probably the best year in terms of budget setting, check disbursement, and then all utapata. But that's okay, because while it definitely knocked, I think, us and everyone off their feet, it was a real test of sort of our agility, our response. And I'm proud. A lot of people who had not taken a leadership role jumped in and really, like, the ANA team was great. They jumped in and took ownership of some key COVID relief efforts. And one thing about Agami, which I think is good to see, we've never been a group that just jumps before thinking. It's like, again, my Amu, right? Amu would always say, think 10 times, act once. So we thought well and long enough so that when we did jump, it was in the right direction. It was effective, and the results that we had actually meant something to the people on the ground. So, like I said, our COVID-19 relief effort was driven hard by the NA team. Wonderful and unexpectedly high fundraising. I think we raised between US and Bangladesh about $100,000 US dollars. And that was really unexpected. And it went through, therefore, to great effect on the ground, where I think we had three phases of disbursement. And this is disbursement of all kinds of goods, including soap, food, flour, I think jalan dal, and that kind of stuff. So nothing on education. It's really just to support the children our Agami children and their family. And from what I understand, that was about a total of about 16,000 people. So again, we're not the biggest NGO back home, but we definitely are having a real impact in the lives of our children. So, you ask about what else did it do? It helped teach us to be, I think, more responsive for these emergency situations because there will be more emergencies. There'll be a cyclone, there'll be some flood, something that will make us more nimble. And it shows to our sponsors and our donors that we definitely can respond to crisis situations. So I think in the end, Agami has responded pretty well. And then, as you said, Mo, the whole style of education is changing. It was it was just so difficult and painful to see that our children were struggling. They weren't in school. And then every time we thought they'd go back to school, delay, delay. And it forced our hand to change the model of education where we're now working on what we call as homeroom model.
Right.
And it's being led by folks in the KV team and the school program team, obviously work with the AEF group. And essentially it's going to be this spectrum, this continuum of, I would say, decidedly low tech stuff, like papers being either dropped off, picked up, something, somehow, but basically paper, all the way to the high tech solution, which is our Khan Academy digital delivery. So for those kids who are fortunate enough to have tablets donated either by us or by someone else, they'll be able to get the Khan Academy delivery. The point is that now Agami being pushed into the situation is forced to look at I think, a more holistic education model. Like I said, goes from no tech to full tech. And the beauty is that the government is noticing. They're seeing that we have this well thought out, well rounded education solution. And now we're in deep discussions with the government. So I think, in a strange way, it's pushed Agami to become better.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, sometimes, the tides are rough, but um, we all definitely have a new perspective. Even me being an Agami member, my perspectives have changed. I remember that a question was asked about, has our objectives changed? And I said, no, our objective was always about education should give you, a healthy mind. Education would actually, a part of education we actually and honestly speaking, I discovered as a volunteer that part of education in Agami also shows health and nutrition, also encapsulates your well-being. And here we are, COVID-19 really pushed us to take care of more underlying factors, and to highlight those that, as and always, health and nutrition was a very, very important part of Agami. In fact, the health for education program that you had, not many people know that, that basically was run by a camp of doctors coming and giving free education to these kids, teaching them what to do right and wrong. I mean, we didn't really have a chance to highlight, and a lot of people didn't know about it. So COVID-19 really brought that into light, that we have it. We were just, we just didn't make it big scale because we just thought that was education still. So in many ways, it has really evolved our message, which is great. And I had say that we're maybe it was tough for you in the beginning, but we have all crossed the waters, and we hoping, COVID-19 is just the other thing that you said, that we started dealing with emergency situations.
Yeah.
Definitely that's a big leap. That's a big leap into it, because I think that's the part of, despite how many processes there are in place, I guess you're never prepared for uncertainty. And glad, I mean, as a volunteer, I'm glad that I could see this flow. And I'm sure, it must have been challenging for you in the beginning, but, three cheers to you, ANIC team, for pulling this through and actually making it happen. I think we actually executed the whole effort within 45 days.
Yeah, it's
Great,
below
right?
2 months, 6 weeks kind of thing.
Yeah, which is great, because to be able to actually cover the whole cost for the all of March, I'm guessing, and then part of April, with just an idea that probably popped out at the right when COVID struck. So that was great on everyone's initiative. And I think Agami Education Foundation, they really worked hard to get that food, those supplies out to the people, which of course, Agami Education Foundation, like I had say that they are truly um,
Heroes.
mascots, because
Yeah.
what they did is not even easy at all. Like in a lockdown situation, they were able to do so much. So definitely, that's something you will always remember, right?
Yeah,
All
for
this.
sure. Well,
Yeah.
I would say, Mo, the AEF team in this respect, the situation, they became like heroes because, as you
Mhm.
said, they shouldn't have even physically gone out. Yet they were so committed to our students. They were going out, hand delivering stuff, making sure the students got supplies. And that really was an amazing degree of commitment that is above and beyond the job.
Wow. I mean, yeah, that's pretty inspiring. That they were able to do that. Like I think we still had a easier. I won't say it's an easier task, but they definitely had a more difficult task than we did.
Sure.
So, okay. So I also want to talk a little bit about, just about remembering your presidency around since you started. So when you took this helm for a second time, what were the organizational goals you had in mind? And more importantly, like during this tenure, were you able to meet them, or is it still something that is in the pipeline and you will, work through it with the next president? Like maybe give us three very specific goals that you were talking about, and have they really come about or not?
So kind of like my report card right now, right?
Yes, yes.
Yes, okay.
For you later.
Yeah. Okay, so it's interesting because I was looking at my tenure. So I had the honor of serving as president from 2003 to 2007. So first president, long time ago. And then my second time was a decade later, 2017. Amazing. So you can see that I've seen, even when I wasn't president, I'm going to be transitioning from that startup I was telling you about, or the early adopters, the people who would go out and advocate for you. That was amazing. We had some people that really believe in Agami. They became our spokespeople. It was wonderful. But so 10 years later, I step in, and as you said, we've grown. But what did I step in terms of looking to try to do into coming into my tenure? There were, I think, Mo, three areas that was were near the top of my head. One of them was structural. So when I say structural, I mean talking about AEF and chapters, and I'll talk about it in a bit. The second one was brand name recognition. And I know it sounds, because all marketing, but the fact remains that as a nonprofit, we need to get our name out there. We need that recognition so we get donations coming in and people trust us. There's some credibility behind our name. So number two, brand name recognition. And number three, this is where I started with this vision back in 1990. I wanted, naively maybe, but I wanted to be able to change the shape of education in Bangladesh. How I didn't quite know back in 1990. But anyway, stepping into 2017, I knew I wanted to have a bigger voice in education in Bangladesh. So those three points. So let's talk a little bit about each one. So structure, AEF. The main thing about AEF, as it was, already by then a pretty vibrant Brazilian group, but the question was, how do you take it to the next level? That's what I wanted to do. How do you enable it or empower it to have independence of decision making, budget ownership, project administration, school monitoring? Because I wanted AEF to stop functioning less as just an arm of Agami, which always asking the president for input and advice and guidance, and really start taking decisions on their own. And I believe that has happened. We have some great leaders emerging within the Bangladesh team, both on the AF and KAV side, and that's fantastic. On the flip side, what's a real shame is that I think because the people we're grooming are good, we've actually lost multiple people to BRAC. So, BRAC's a big name organization. When they come poaching, AEF for people, that says something. But anyway, the point is, I believe we've made real big strides in AEF, and they've done, I think, almost a better job than Agami General of documenting their processes. They're really good about capturing to a T what they're supposed to get done. And they've done a good job staffing up. They've hired a GM, and now they're working on formal NGO qualifications. So I think the AEF body, AEF/KB, has done a pretty good job of meeting my desires. The other part of structure is chapters and groups. And I think here, Mo, I don't have a good grade. We have two chapters up and running well, ANIC and ASIC. They both actually took a lull, or I think maybe quieting down in activity, but over the last few years, both ANIC and ASIC have become totally revitalized and resurgent, which I think is great. So, with Itikar leading ASIC and Tassin leading ANIC, we have strong, fresh new blood. I think it's exciting. So the chapters have revitalized, which is great. But where I think I have not done a good enough job is growing more chapters. We've been talking about the Canada chapter for a long time. Something in Toronto, something in Ottawa, and multiple founders have tried, but it just hasn't taken yet. And we have a new group working in Charlotte, but again, trying to make them, cross that chasm into chapter is the next step. So I would say sort of a mixed grade there in chapters, but I hope that's something that the next president can focus on in terms of the growth and scaling. Chapters will be an important part of the scaling. Okay, brand name recognition. Well, it boils down maybe in my non-marketing head to how do we make Agami a household name? I want everyone to know about Agami. I didn't start this baby for nothing, right? And I am still amazed at how many people know about Agami. It's kind of cool that you'll talk to people in Bangladesh, the US, and Europe, and they know about Agami. They heard about it. They heard about our work. So it means we're doing something right.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say that we're a household name yet, but I am happy and proud that we've made that much, inroads into people's consciousness. So it's great. The last, definitely not the least, is shaping education in Bangladesh. And like I said, when I first started this thing in 1990, we're talking to Abu, I had big dreams, big hopes. And I'm not trying to indict the system we had in Bangladesh, but we all know it could use some elevation, shall we say.
Yep.
And I had a lot of people, my Abu, some of my mamas who were in the system, family and non-family, said, are you crazy? Changing the system, don't bother. But look at us now, 30 years later, right? The irony is that my initial X many years of Agami, I said we're going to work around the government because that's going to slow us down. But at some point, the reality is that to scale, you need someone with huge reach and deep pockets. Well, who's that? That's the government. And the irony that we are now working with the government on our homeroom initiative I mentioned before. And, I think the marketing team will probably talk about it in other channels, but we're now showing some of our Khan Academy type videos on Chonshak TV, which gets out to about 70% of the population. We went through a competition with a number of other startups. These are for-profit startups. And while a total of I believe five of us made it to the final and are providing videos to the Ministry of Education, ours was chosen by the validation committee to be the gold standard that others should try to aspire to. So the point is that shaping education in Bangladesh, maybe we're not owning all of it yet, but man, we're really close. Where now the government is looking to us to help drive education and delivery of education to the children in the country. That's that's something that all of us should be really proud of. It's not my work, it's everyone's work that has just believed in the mission, in the primacy of education, and has made it happen.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, no one else better than you could have put it that we are being able to do this really exciting thing, very different from what we have been usually doing. And wow, and I have actually witnessed some of these videos. They're amazing.
Hmm.
They're amazing. And I was just hearing from someone that they have so much to finish in a short period of time, because they're actually showing these videos Monday to Thursday all the way, and that would definitely mean that there's just so much work that's going into it. So kudos to the Agami Education Foundation team and the Khan Academy Bangla team for what they're doing on their side. And yeah, I mean, that's the hope, as marketing, even I think I share the same idea as you, that it should be a very familiar name when we go out in North America and in Bangladesh,
Yeah.
and hoping that reality is maybe close, or let's just say that we have a lot to do, but I mean, I'm pretty confident that we can get there, especially with all these really exciting ventures into digital life. I think it's amazing, like how Bangladesh is becoming so digitally competent.
Mhm.
Um, I, I just think that we always talked about California being that tech hub, but it looks like Bangladesh and almost all countries are picking up pace on it. So that's amazing how it's gone out and about. Also, I wanted to ask you that you spoke about chapters that we could the outreach could be much higher if we had more chapters, and of course, if there are more chapters in concentrated areas, people would know more about Agami, or at least understand what Agami is trying to do here. So what like do you believe these chapters growth has been still restricted due to certain things, or and what is your intention in terms of establishing new chapters in the future? I mean, um, is it something that is because of a technical problem that we are not being able to, or it's just that we don't have the best resources?
Well, I think, as I mentioned, chapters are really important to Agami's growth. In the beginning, before we got to the chasm, we had to focus on just sort of the product, and process came later. But now we need to focus, we're focusing on people, we just need more people.
Mhm.
And remember I mentioned, and I think this is to answer your question, Mo, the next big part in people is finding more leaders. To start a chapter is a lot of work. Whether it's a chapter, remote chapter, or even Agami Central when we started this thing, it was a lot of work. But the three founders did a lot of the legwork to get the paperwork and the government stuff out of the way. But you still, for remote chapters, you need someone who's willing to spend those extra hours, that deep commitment that'll push them, even at the end of a long work day, to spend a few more hours calling people up, making sure that they're delivering on their whatever ideas, goals, what it may be. So chapters important. I think the shortfall has been we just need more initiation points, more leaders in those, let's say Houston, Georgia, wherever. We need some more people there. And then maybe, and I don't know, maybe we need to do a better job developing process. So when a chapter tries to come online, we can give them almost a recipe book.
Mhm.
Say, look, follow these steps and you'll end up with a chapter. Right now, I fear many of them are stepping into an unknown. And while Agami is a relatively supportive group, they may just not know whom to go to. So it's incumbent upon us to communicate how to capture and document process, how to build chapters. And these chapters are important because remember I mentioned the pipeline for talent.
Mhm.
This is where we get new, young, fresh ideas. Whether it's old, young, middle people doesn't matter, but we need a diversity of ideas. And I feel these chapters will be that pipeline for us.
That's great. And what you talk about a recipe book, that's really interesting to me. And being a marketing person, I mean, organically, I will say that because membership is developing, and we have a great membership team on board now. I mean, I think that's one of the keystones to meet, probably in the next year, to make sure that there is a recipe book for chapters to organize themselves and come about. That's amazing what you tell me. And I mean, I'm going to take that idea, and forward it to the membership team. Because
Fantastic.
I mean, since they've started off, why not? This is a great foot to put forward about how to get these chapters and outreach, and then that's also something that I think, over the past few days we had a conversation with with membership team about what is it. And I remember you mentioning that, my god, it's not just membership, it is just so big. And I think that's amazing that we just didn't realize until the membership team was on board how big our initiatives have been, and how important it is to look after our volunteers rather.
Yeah.
That's amazing. The other question, and I'll try to make it shorter now. So,
No problem. I have time more. I'll give time. This is important.
so tell me one thing, like, let's talk a little bit about Agami processes, the ones that are existent. I know that even they have evolved. So let's talk about Agami operations. We have a new director for Agami analytics, which is a different role altogether. And of course, it is something that came into being because technologically, we want to know, are we really reaching out to the right number of people, and are we actually responding to an audience who wants to know more about it? So that's a very interesting position that opened up about data analytics. I
Mhm.
know that we just talked about membership, that it's growing. There is just not about talking to members and telling, oh, you're a member of Agami, but so much more. There is an HR field of that. There is a part of that membership is basically onboarding processes, which is definitely something evolved. In terms of marketing, if I speak for myself, I basically have another 4 teams under the umbrella now, and
Mhm.
they're doing 4 different things all together. I mean, where marketing was just considered one unit. So everything has really become bigger in terms of process. It has organizationally been way more active than it has been before. So I would like to know your vision, or I wouldn't call it vision, but you are going through this. So, what are the areas that you feel at this point of time is strengthening Agami? Of course, each of these processes are in its own self, but what are the processes that you are seeing that, in terms of areas or marketing, that is most needed at this point and is basically strengthened Agami as of like today?
Okay. So I'll start off maybe stepping back a little bit more, and I'll give kudos to your team because when I stepped in to the presidency, I mentioned the structure. Actually, maybe I should have included the EC structure
Mm-hmm.
because we didn't have a lot of the areas being driven hard. And it's just life because, people were appointed by me, but then they have to move on for various reasons. Just life happens, right? And so one of the holes we had was marketing. And so there were actually a number of areas that needed to be addressed. At that time, they were discrete functions: marketing, membership, um, fundraising, and those all were discrete functions. But you've stepped up wonderfully and stepped into that role. And so now you're driving all the marketing, all the social media, the membership, even some of the fundraising, which is just fantastic. So the point I'm making is that in terms of the key areas that need to be addressed within an organization, now not central, but an organization, we're starting to hit them and grow teams around that. This is the leadership I'm talking about. And then the newer, new recruits coming in, backfilling and learning those skills and then capturing those skills and documenting the process. So you've got a lot of that stuff covered. Another area which I had to backfill, and I think we've got a great film now, is finance. So we had a great person leading finance, but then because of contractual issues with work, he had to step away from any kind of formal position within Agami, which is a shame because he was really good. But then we had Steve Perez who stepped in, and he is a true finance guy. So it's not like he's just doing it out of a hobby. And now it's great. We have that degree of detail, control, closed loop finances between the QuickBooks, Neon, PayPal. We've not had the degree of financial closure, shall we say, and rigor. So we have finance covered now, database. So you talked about the analytics position. This is something that one of the things I've been fighting for years, maybe even before, I think before I even stepped in as president, I was pushing we need some CRM, some customer relationship management tool. And the initial CRM I proposed was Salesforce. Mm-hmm. And it just was a bit cumbersome and needed someone full time, and that person was not identified at that point. So it didn't really have ownership, and it was also, I think, a little bit different, inaccessible. Mm-hmm. So then I found this tool called Neon and identified, Parvez, working with him, and he's stepped up wonderfully. He's taken full ownership of it, and just like it's not just Agami, any company, an organization, anywhere in the world, data is almost the most important thing you can have. And we have, as you know, Mo, hundreds, if not thousands of contacts within our database. Obviously, they're split amongst, like I said, our volunteers, our members, our donors, our supporters, sponsors. How do we track them all? We had spreadsheets. We were losing data, again, because some of it was institutional knowledge. It was in your folder or your folder. Now it's centralized data. And now you, the marketing team or the analytics team, can actually go run analytics on who are our most frequent donors, or have these donors stopped donating? Why? Do they respond well to these certain campaigns? Mm-hmm. We didn't have that visibility. So point in terms of process, that's another, I think, major process upgrade we made in my time here. There's still more work to get done, but now the wheels are moving. And last but not least, I think this is where there's a gap, is that the other processes which get captured in operations, I think we have some of them, but we'll need probably to pick up a new operations lead and just try to start driving with a focus on scale.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. I mean, yes, no doubt about it. The last few years, it's a lot has been rolling up, even with the fundraising, with fundraising initiative. So I think last but not the least, I do want to talk about the fundraising initiatives that we've been having. Obviously, the last, I could say I've been here for 3 good active years, so I can speak only about that. But in terms of fundraising, do you feel it's a lot more livelier than before? I mean, I think livelier would be the wrong word to choose, but you think it's more robust, and you think that people are genuinely responding well to the fundraising campaigns? Because I also understand that as of today, there are so many more nonprofit organizations in North America itself, and we're all probably fighting for the same position because we all want to make sure that we do our causes right. In addition to that despite all these organizational developments we're having, and we're reaching out to the donors, there is competition, there is technology happening, but technology is competitive, so there is a lot to lose, and there is a lot you can gain if you're doing it right. So what do you think about these fundraising campaigns? Because I believe you're very actively involved, especially for a major one that is the Agami year-end fundraising every year that we do it. So you're majorly involved in, and we're all sort of, within the team, we're all sort of counting down the pipeline to make sure at least that, we meet that mark so that we could do what we wanted to really do. So, I mean, through this time, do you think that between everything that is economically, competitive, like like I mentioned, competition. There is technology limitations at some point. There's of course resource limitations some with, because we have more volunteers working. Sometimes we just don't have enough volunteers by the end of the year to take over it. Despite all this, do you think that fundraising for us has been a very, very successful campaign, or you think that we have a lot of steps to still move?
I would say more that there's a lot of opportunity
Mm-hmm.
for fundraising efforts. I believe that within the capabilities of people we had and the resources we had,
Mm-hmm.
we did a really good job of maximizing the output of the fundraising effort. So you can imagine, take it back 15 years when I don't even know if Facebook existed back then, but it was a highly manual effort. And the flavor I have in my head from the fundraising 1, 2 decades ago,
Mm-hmm.
but it was a lot of manual work,
Mm-hmm.
and it was often the same core group of people. And as you can imagine, that's not sustainable from a, let's just say, a burnout point of view, because if the same group of people are doing the the main fundraiser, like doing the sit down fundraiser,
Mm-hmm.
and then the year end fundraiser, and then any other little events, there's just going to be burnout. And what I've seen over the past 5, 6, 7 years is more and more new people taking leadership, taking ownership of the fundraising activities. And as you saw, I try to make this fundraising effort more distributed. So in other words, just because it's a fundraiser being held, let's just say in Virginia, it doesn't mean that it's a silo. It doesn't mean that you cannot draw upon resources from people anywhere in Agami. That's the discussion we had with the ASIC team years ago about opening up and locking down all the walls and saying, look, now we're all available to each other, because someone in Central may have unique skills in PayPal scripting.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to need those. Why would I hide them? So what I'm saying is that we have now accrued a great toolbox of skills around Agami, which are now available to all of Agami at fundraisers, even AEF.
You put that really well.
I love that we have those picked up those skills.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that toolbox of skills, we're also gaining or increasing our sophistication, because remember, I remember doing paper flyers. Oh my God. Uh, Actually, cards I would give to colleagues saying, please come to this fundraiser. Trifles, paper trifles. We've gone all digital, which is great. So we're keeping ahead. We're a technology based nonprofit. We've always tried to be either with or ahead of the technological trends. So we're now absolutely paperless, which is great. We've gone, electronic database. You're now driving an active social media team
Mm-hmm.
with Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. So essentially, we're sort of on the cutting edge of everything as much as possible. So I think that's great in terms of our sophistication has been keeping up with the technology trends.
That's great. And I think, yes, having said that, as much as fundraising is becoming competitively a technology-based process now, I think it's, I can tell enough that, because I have been looking at numbers for a long time. So behind the scenes, when I look at the numbers, one thing that I would like to give a compliment to you and the other founders is that you actually have that core group of people, who you spoke about some time back, about like a decade before, that you made relationships with. They're still continuing to be the same people as well, who donate, who actively participate in your fundraising, despite however it looks now, versus what it was before. So that's great, because I think also, what you bring is a big wealth of, people that you have had a chance to communicate and maintain a goodwill with. And I think the stuff that the new people are learning in is that how to basically use that goodwill and to kind of expand it to others. So I think there is a good this is the best of two world, sorry, I want to say this is the best of the two world that is coming from like a decade later, and now the experiences that we get to experience because of what you all did. So thank you so much, actually. That's been very enlightening. And at the same time, I mean, I feel privileged that I was actually able to take your exit interview. And like I mentioned to you, the most of this interview was basically taken an initiative of Agami News. Again, that's another very new venture, but it's keeping up pretty well with its team and processes in place.
Right.
Um, and so basically, this was an Agami News interview, but at the same time, me as marketing will never give up the chance of having it somewhere, so that we can
Sense.
always, yeah, we can always, use this conversation to enlighten other people what they want to do and what Agami is all about. So thank you so much for taking the time to give your insights and input into this interview. um, and I think last but not the least, I will really miss you because I know, I've been calling you odd hours and telling you what I want to do and pouring in ideas. And so I'm really going to miss that part because definitely, it's been like, I think I started off marketing with you
Yes.
technically.
Yes.
So it's not going to be easy to, it's going to be a difficult change to me as well.
No.
But yeah, I'm just still glad you're still the founder there, and you will always be there. So that's the great part
Yes.
of it.
I'll
Yeah.
always be here, Mo, and thank you so much for the kind word, Mo. It's, as you know, I love talking about Agami. I love just seeing the arc of Agami, and this is a dream come true for me. Not many people get to live their crazy dreams out, and working with people like you who believe in the cause is just so inspirational, motivation for me, keeps me going. So thank you so much for all the work you're doing with your team and just everyone in the whole Agami team. It's been
I
amazing.
think, I think also that, if you hadn't thought about it in 1990, we all would not be in the same place sharing it. So I think it happens both ways, but just glad that, we're all in the right place and like looking at the same dream all together now. But just that in 1990, you were by yourself. Now you have at least a handful of 200 volunteers just sitting down here and, seeing the same dream as you are. And their Agami Education Foundation, your best weapon on the ground. They're doing what they can do best to keep, your dream and vision going. But thank you for everything that you've been doing and you will continue to do.
Thanks so much, Mo.
Thank you.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye bye.